Fire training.
Yeah. I'll use dates. Call me meeting to order at 7 o'clock, April 29th. First order on the agenda is Region 20 Superintendent Schools. Present the school 26, 27, or no, 25, 26 budget. So I'm not sure who wants to lead the discussion, but happy to have you jump in.
Right,
Well, actually, before that, I know Tracy, I have public comment on number 6. Seeing how there's a lot of public here tonight, and I don't want to keep you till the end of the meeting. I'd like to have someone make a motion to move public comment up under the presentation.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved? Okay. The floor is yours.
Great. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and speak with everyone and hopefully respond to questions. Format will go is we'll have our interim superintendent start off our presentation, and we'll try to run through it very quickly to get to the question and answer portion. I think that's the meat of the matter for this evening. Thank you.
So the presentation begins with what typically opens up our regional district presentations, which is the enrollment projections. Because that's what tells you what your percentage of the budget is going to be for the town of Morris. It's based, as you know, on a 5-year trend. And they're adding in Litchfield enrollment into this 5-year trend so that the Region 20 model stays true to the education plan. As you'll see, the trend of Morris's enrollment is somewhat going up from 2020 to 2021 to 24, 2025. You have a delta of about 7 students. That percentage later on, Julia will talk about how that breaks down into the overall percentage based on the general enrollment of the district. Specifically, some information regarding the projected elementary enrollment. There really isn't anything worthy of note except for the bubble, which we refer to in grade 3, which is a large number of students that is large enough where it may actually affect the number of FTE that you have to have in a grade level. So once that grade level moves on, your FTE moves back to where it needs to be, but that need for the FTE follows the bubble or the wave, so to speak, throughout elementary. And programming next year for pre-K right now is scheduled to be held at Goshen Center, James Morris, and Litchfield Center School with both AM and PM 2 sections of each.
Sorry to interrupt. So not in Warren.
Correct.
Okay. Because I thought I saw that there was one. So that person needs to go.
That student will be transported to one of our schools.
Okay.
One of the other schools.
Yeah.
So the projected enrollment for secondary, there is a slight decrease in the middle school overall, and you will see that for one more year. The decrease isn't enough to necessarily change program dramatically, but it is enough for us to make some adjustments to accommodate for those 2 years. The projected enrollment for the agri-science program remains pretty static at 249 students at the high school, which does meet the teacher to student ratio. That's only including high school students. The 8th grade agri-science program isn't part of our agri-science statistics. So that breaks down the enrollment, which justifies or explains how much Morris would be responsible for the overall school budget. And now Julia will talk to you about the revenues, the money that comes in.
So on page 8, slide 8 of the presentation, which is posted to the district's website, shows you the revenue that we'll receive from tuitions. This fiscal year, the 2024 to 25 fiscal year budget had $2.052 million in tuition revenue. The next column, you can see our actual projected and then our proposed budget for next year. So our proposed budget is more in line with the actual projections that we're anticipating to receive in revenue from tuition this school year because it's based on actual enrollments. There's no grant monies included and there's no anticipation of higher enrollments. This is just based on our true enrollment. And it includes ASSE tuition for our regular ed students, ASSE tuition for our special education students, out of district tuition, which is our non-resident students that come into the district, and our preschool tuition, where we charge the non-identified students $3,000 per year. The next slide is more revenue. This is state and other revenue. So the top portion of the slide shows our grants, such as our ASCII grant, the ASCII supplemental grant, Medicaid, and excess costs. And in this category, again, you'll see a reduction in revenue for a few reasons. The ASCII grant has been reduced slightly based on actual projection, and also because we're seeing a slightly lower projection in ASCII students that are coming from other towns. We are anticipating the ASCII supplemental grant to be received again next year. We understand that this was a 1-year only grant. And then Medicaid.
Order at 7:02, if you would stand for the pledge allegiance.
Projected, more in line with, what we're actually projecting for Medicaid. Excess costs has been zeroed out, but we are still anticipating receiving excess cost grant from the state. And we're anticipating about $500,000, but now instead of showing those grants as revenue, they're going to be directly offsetting expenditures to directly reflect the expenses that they were applied for. The bottom half of that slide shows our other revenue. Miscellaneous revenue has been zeroed out. Interest has been to more accurately reflect what we are earning on our money market account. Rental fees has been zeroed out. And again, the grants have been zeroed out because they're no longer going accounted for as revenue. So the right side of that slide online, you can see all of the grants that we are anticipating, which we will show the board next year in a separate fund so they can see what's coming in and coming out in regards to grants. The next slide shows the town assessments. So based on the 5-year rolling enrollment figures, Morris will be at $5.9 million. That's after we take into account all of the tuition that we just talked about. The town assessments for all 4 towns is $40.6 million based on your enrollment. Morris will be at $5.9 million for next year. The next portion of the presentation shows our expenses. So the next slide, slide 12, is just a high-level overview of all of the categories that everyone's familiar with, where fiscal year 25 budget was adopted and where we're proposing fiscal year 26 budget be, and then the increases and decreases per category, which we'll touch on in a little bit why there's such large fluctuations in each category. The next slide just shows the major costs. So again, it's all of the categories and highlighting where we're proposing fiscal year 26 budget be. But then it shows you where the majority of our budget is, which is, as you can see, categories 1, 2, and 3, which is all of our staff salaries and benefits. The total of those 3 categories is about 80% of our budget. And now Dr. Villar will touch on all of those variances.
So as you examine this year's budget compared to last year's budget, you do see that there are some significant changes. And a lot of that is due to the work that Julie is doing to recategorize expenditures and make our line items much clearer and more distinct, less large buckets and more smaller buckets, so that in future years, it's going to be easier to track actual expenditures. But if you look at category 0, this has a significant reduction this year because $1.1 million capital projects has been pulled from the budget. This is part of the borrowing plan that is proposed for this upcoming May 6th. There's also included in the line for capital for category 0, is the debt service payment for Region 6, about $137,000. And the debt service payment for the Litchfield bond that was processed in December of 24, and that's about $184,000. We're also projecting the debt service for the bond that's proposed in May 6th, and that will be an interest-only payment of $127,000 in the first year. And then there's a contingency included for $325,000. Category 8. You'll see that some shoring up of projections. In the fiscal year 25 budget, there were many things, and as I go through this, you will hear this repeatedly. There are many items that were underfunded. And so you'll see increases in some of these categories as Julie and the team have sought to right-size the budget so that it accounts for all expenditures. Category 9, for example, athletic field repair and maintenance has been added to this budget. It was not included in fiscal year 25. Moving to page 15. There. Okay. Category 1, so that's certified salaries, obviously the largest line in our budget. There is a contractual increase included in this category, but there's also reductions in certified staff to offset some of that growth that would have been in that line item. So you'll see 8 certified positions were eliminated in fiscal year 26. There were also positions in 24 and 14 and 25 that were reduced from this budget. Category 2 will show that we had underfunded for substitutes in this current fiscal year. So there's $173,000 that's included for substitute teachers. Longevity payments had not been included in the current year's operating budget. So $76,000 is included for the projected budget, as are $25,000 for homebound tutoring and $45,000 for extended year summer school programming, which is required by law for students who have individualized education plans that are part of our special education program. Slide 16 in category 4, you'll see many items reduced. So curriculum development of science of reading, $198,000 is reduced. After-school enrichment programming for $70,000 was reduced. After-school coverage, which would be staff time, $30,000 was reduced. Professional development for $35,000 reduction, and then a reduction of $140,000 in clinical services. There is an item, field trip transportation, that has been moved to category 6 in the sum of $67,000. In category 6, you'll see that we had to right-size our transportation contract funds. An additional $300,000 is included in that line. And then an additional $240,000 for special education transportation cost. Also, there was underfunding in the current fiscal year's budget of $70,000 for fuel. So that has been added back. And also underfunding for middle school athletics and extended school year transportation at $46,000. Finally, I like to end the presentation reminding folks what's actually remaining in the budget, because there's been a lot of public discussion about eliminations of positions and programming, and obviously folks become very concerned if you have children enrolled in schools. So the budget does continue to support K-12 mental health and social emotional supports for children. It continues to support K-12 band, chorus, music, and exploration programming in the schools. It does support elementary literacy instructional coaching for our teachers. There are 2 positions that remain for that work, and they will work across the elementary schools. It continues to support the middle school agri-science programming. The high school advanced placement and UConn ECE courses remain in this budget. Our athletics, the 3-season 16-sport middle school athletic program and a 3-season 24-sport high school athletics program are funded. Fall and winter theater productions in the middle and high school remain funded. The world language program, grades 7 through 12, remains funded. And pre-K programming for 3- and 4-year-olds remains in the budget. So at that point, we'll conclude our formal presentation and then prepare to answer your questions best we can.
Great.
Thank you.
For Morris, there is an increase of, I know there's an enrollment increase. Do we have the numbers there?
It was. Overall, from last year, you had 196. This year it's 211, or, in 2023-24, your enrollment was 196 students. In 24-25, it was 211.
Because of that, Morris is actually going up a little bit more in the school budget because we have to take on additional students. And then I guess a couple towns, I think Litchfield and Goshen, the enrollment's going down. Right, so we have to sort of offset some of those costs, right? So the towns that have increased enrollment get hit a little harder.
Well, your 5-year average was 205 last
Okay.
year. Your 5-year average this year is 204.4.
Okay.
So it's a 0.6 delta forward.
Okay.
So that's no.
And that's precisely why it's a 5-year average.
The trend is not, yeah, but
Right.
Not to be.
Delta's still.
Gotcha, because in the past, it would huge differences. So, okay, thank you for that. Julia, I think you may have put this up. There's a bunch of questions and answers on the Board of Ed website that I don't know that the general public, unless they've gone to the Board of Ed website and taken a look at this, but I wanted to kind of just run through a couple of these, just since we have public here. So the first question deals with the loan. Now, is it one question I have, people keep calling it a bond, people calling it a loan. What is this?
It is a loan.
It is a loan. So
Yes.
it's not, we're not bonding,
No,
we're taking out a loan,
yes,
and the loan that you've shopped around is about
7.24%.
okay.
Yeah.
Is that the same institution that had
It's the same,
the bond for the Litchfield?
yes.
Okay,
And that's why we're anticipating this time around lower closing costs because we were just through this process with them.
just for my information, how much was the closing cost for the 1.9 million bond?
I don't know that number exactly.
Okay,
I don't have that right here. I can get that to you.
I'm sorry?
I wasn't here.
Julia was here.
Yeah.
I could find that.
Okay, that would be interesting.
In all fairness.
Yeah. So the question one is, we thought that the loan, and I was at the Board of Ed meeting when they approved 3.5 million. And now it's gone up to 3.5, 30,000. So I understand that there's reasons for that. Maybe you could kind of walk us through some of those reasons. But I think one of the overall things that concerns our town people is that we say one thing and then we come back and we hit them with $30,000. There's other things that we say we're gonna, it's 1.9 million, and then it gets to 2.3 million, and then we added another one, and then we find other things. So I think part of the concern is, the real numbers, to build budgets, to stay adherent to those budgets. And then I have a question as a Board of Finance Chair, if we go over our budget, there's ramifications. So could you talk a little bit about the 3.53 and then also talk a little bit about some of the controls that you guys have put in place so that we don't blow our budget next year?
Sure. So the 3.53 consists of our projected deficit of $2.3 million. Plus our capital projects for fiscal year 26, which are 1.129 or 1.13 million. And then we had included in there anticipated up to $100,000 in closing costs. Because when we went forward with this loan, we weren't sure what the closing costs would be. So we gave ourselves some room for up to $100,000 in closing costs.
That's why I was asking what the 1.9 closing cost was,
Right.
just to understand it, that if that $100,000 seems like a pretty large chunk to close, it's also a fairly large loan. So I thought we went with the same institute because we could get a discount. So I'd be curious to know what the 1.9 was
Mhm.
and see how we stack up against that for the 1.
I can get that for you. When we put in the $100,000 for closing costs, that was advised to us from CFO consultant who did the December bond.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it was around there, but I can definitely get the correct answer for that. But the closing costs, I was in touch with the bank last week or the week prior, and they will be around $40,000. So like we've told other towns, if the closing costs come in less, just as if our $2.3 million deficit for this year come in less, we'll only borrow what we need to cover those two things. So the 3.53 number is a not to exceed number.
Mhm.
So if our deficit, I know we're working hard on making sure that all of our encumbrances are accurate throughout the rest of the school year, and trying to really zero in on that projection. So if it comes in at 2.2 million, we will reduce our borrowing by $100,000.
And we're not gonna borrow to pay off closing costs.
Right.
It was a agreement from the board passed to borrow up to 3.350. And the legal notice that went out was to borrow up to.
Right.
So if the closing costs come in less than that, we wouldn't obviously borrow to pay off closing costs,
So,
but we wouldn't know what those closing costs.
and there's been some discussions about, taking whatever's not used and
Yep.
applying that. I guess my concern is don't borrow it. Don't repay stuff you don't need.
Right.
Just don't borrow it.
Right, absolutely.
So when do you anticipate, I know there's a town vote on that, but when do you anticipate having those numbers to actually go out and?
It's hard to say what our deficit will be because we don't know what
Right,
may
but
happen.
once you know that, then you go to get the loan, and then I assume that's a bit of a process. So I guess timing is really kind of important, right? To
Yes.
understand, because you're gonna potentially start next year in a deficit. Correct?
Yes.
And then talked a little bit about the controls. Because I think that is probably the most upsetting thing. I'm sure you've heard it. We hear it. We have to stick to a budget. If we go over our budget, there's things we have to do. We have to go back to the townspeople and ask for additional money. I don't believe that was ever the case. I don't know that and then the other part of that is, well, why did we overspend and who's responsible for that? So talked a little bit about the controls.
Sure.
Maybe Kristen, if you could talk a little bit about like how we overspent.
So when I started in looking at the budget in the beginning of February, the first thing that I noticed is that the fiscal year 25 budget it had a lot of large categories and they were all round numbers. Not a lot seemed to be based on actual quotes. So that's the number one thing that we changed moving into the next school year is how the budget was built. And it's built now based on itemized requests from all of the staff, all the way down to the supplies and the nurses' supplies, but also reaching out to our vendors for quotes, doing trending analysis on our oil usage and our electricity usage to narrow down every single line item. So now the budget is built a lot more on, itemized backup. And moving into next year, we're going to do the same thing with purchase requests. If someone wants to request to order supplies, we're going to check that those requests tie back to a budget request. So whatever the budget is built on is what will be spent in the following year. We're also planning on releasing the budget in segments, quarterly segments. So as of July 1st, if one school's budget is $100,000 for a category, they might get $25,000 of that to spend, and we'll review the projections on a monthly basis and release more money on a quarterly basis to keep it more in line with our projections. There always have been an approval process in the central office. We've tightened that up a lot. I know since I've been in, there's been no spending unless it's on safety or security, but a lot more eyes are on everything now so that they tie back and so that things are itemized. And everything has formal backup from the vendors. I put together this whole long detailed list of all of the controls that will be in place, but I think those are the biggest changes, I would say.
So just so I understand, like if something needs to be purchased, who approves that purchase currently or in the past, right?
It
Because you-
goes,
Go ahead.
so if someone in a school wants to purchase something, the administrative assistant will enter it, and then it first goes through the principal. And then after it goes through the principal, it will come to myself. And then after it goes there, then it'll be ordered, and then the invoice is reviewed again now by myself and the superintendent.
So that's currently, you weren't there, but maybe you can talk a little bit about how it happened in the past. Because clearly we're over budget, right? We overspent. We knew we were gonna overspend. We overspent, right? So I guess it's on a lot of people's minds. How is that possible? Who approved that? Was it the Board of Ed? Was it the superintendent? Was it a combination? I think those are questions that people are seeking to understand.
I wasn't involved in the approval of any purchase orders or any of the finances during the time that I was operating as acting superintendent. That was all the chief financial officer. So as invoices are coming in and need to be paid, he would approve for those invoices to be paid. I think looking at the budget from last year, and if you take all of the revenue and look at what it would have been accurately, and then match that against the expenses that were underfunded, there was not enough money projected into the budget for the expenses that were necessary, and the expenses that were there obviously were under projected. And they were fixed expenses. Things like longevity, things like substitutes, transportation, we've mentioned those a number of times. Now, why the budget was built in the way that it was built, that I don't know. That wasn't part of my process. But as bills are coming in,
So money was spent and you just received an invoice that had to get paid, or how did that transpire?
again, the process has always been an invoice comes in, whoever's responsible for the invoice signs off that the service was received. And then the chief financial officer will look at those, at the warrant, and authorize what checks are going to get cut off of the account.
Right, but I guess there's a point in which you know that we're gonna overspend. The encumbrance.
Yes. Is there an encumbrance process?
I don't think Tom started an encumbrance process until
October,
October, November.
Are we going to encumber going forward?
Absolutely,
100%.
Good.
Mhm.
100%.
Thank
You can't make an accurate projection without solid encumbrances.
Well, I think one of the things that happened was that it was one of those, we still have checks though, where you have money last year, because there was no encumbrance system. So it's good to hear we're gonna address that.
Yeah.
How much of the overage is payroll?
Sorry?
How much of the overage is payroll out of 2.3 million? Because everything else, it's anything else that's been spent is really,
I think we were told it was about 1 million. It was 800 in admin and 300 in certified.
it's
And
just,
that was 6 months ago.
because usually by the time it gets to the controller, it's done. I mean,
Right.
the bill has to be paid. So the person, it's really the department heads that you would, if it's not payroll, it's the department head who decided they didn't care about their budget. And how does that happen? You know what I'm saying? You can't buy something.
Without any direct knowledge.
Exactly, yeah.
Without any direct knowledge, I can say 80% of any school district's budget is staffing. So the
Yeah,
fact
that's what I'm
that,
thinking.
again, from just reading newspapers, the fact that there were, more than 10 staff members unbudgeted for,
Yeah.
known in July, that there is the beginning of a snowball.
Correct. No, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was thinking, mostly payroll.
And then you have contracts, right? And those big contracts, like transportation, were underfunded. And they obviously have to be paid, and those are big chunks of money too. So I could see how that,
And insurance and food services.
I have a question, if you don't mind me, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
Based on what you're talking about, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna veer off,
All
I'm
right,
gonna
go-
stay
go.
where we are.
Oh.
Moving forward, I'm gonna talk about moving forward, because
Yeah.
we know, looking back, this is where we are. The Board of Ed. It's got a function, a budgetary function. And as we all know, I'm on both. Today I'm wearing my finance hat, but looking forward to the Board of Ed. How much of an active role do you see moving forward that the Board of Ed's gonna play? Because I think the Board of Ed, since I've been on, has always been sort of told what it is and didn't take or wasn't given an active role in the monthly, we're paying this, or what is it? It was more like, this is what we're paying and that's what you're getting. And I know it's gonna be a working process. You have people that may not be familiar with the budgetary process, so when you give them like, we're looking for an approval, they might look at you and go, what? But do you see the Board of Ed taking a more active approach and approving, we're running over here? Just an FYI, and because all budgets, and I've been sitting here for a lot of years. And there are things that are gonna go over. The other thing's gonna be under, you're gonna move this, you're gonna move that.
Mhm.
And I know being on the Board of Finance, Rick is gonna give us, he's gonna give us a very detailed report every month. And we're gonna be in the know. And then if things start to go crazy haywire, and they can, how much of a role is the Board of Ed, you guys plan on bringing to the Board of Ed?
Thank you for that question. For the audience, I start on Thursday.
I know that. In all fairness, this is a projection. This is what's your?
But I have been looking at things and I've been involved since the 20th of March.
Right.
So I'm definitely getting up to speed. When a system's healthy, a Board of Education spends a lot of time on the front end, looking into the budget, identifying contracts, understanding where the expenditures are. And then you set your budget, and then administration administers the district, spends the funds within the budget lines. It's when, and gives regular reporting to the board, the status of accounts, you know, where you are at this time in the year. So every month there should be a financial report that the board can see, ask questions about, and track our progress. If we find ourselves in a scenario where the lines that have been established are about to be overfunded or overexpended and there were need transfers, that's a function of me going to the board and saying to the board, here's where we are. We feel it's important to transfer X dollars from this account, which we believe we will not overexpend, move it to this account because we have a critical need that was unanticipated. The board has to make that approval, and it's in a public meeting, so everybody knows.
Right.
That's an essential accountability piece, a check and balance. It cannot be, you know, us in the back room just making these decisions. Usually there's a threshold set. So if you're talking $100 or $4,000, you're not calling a meeting. But when you start to get the big expenditures, it has to be very transparent. We fully intend on doing that. I'm pleased that Julie has been putting controls into place. We're talking about additional, like, how can we be super sure that things are going in the right way? For me, the whole administrative team's a new group of people I know nothing about. And so, you know, finances, you have to earn trust. And clearly, we're in a situation right now where no one trusts what has happened. And so we have to claw that back, and transparency and being very careful about this next fiscal year is going to be very important.
Yeah, gonna follow up. I'm Hunter. I'm on the board with you. Thank you, by the way, for taking the roles. So for 11 years, that trust has just been not there. We've been fed half reports and half budgets, and they basically, in the past, Tracy will tell you, we've been on the Board of Finance for over 10 years.
It's never been.
They would give us a skeleton budget, and there was nothing we could do about it. Now, Chris Leone's team gave us a better view of what was going on, whether it was real or not. But we were very happy that he was doing what he did. He actually spoke with us, talked to us, and gave us information, whether it was right or wrong. But it's going to take a long time for you to build that back. And just as Board of Finance for Region 6, we're very gun shy. We have 2 of our Board of Finance members on the Board of Ed for good reasons, because we want to see they're our front line when we're sitting here as the Board of Finance explaining it out to our townsfolk. So I just want to know if you would feel open to, prior to the Board of Ed voting on the budgets, making sure that we have a really transparent line item view of what is coming to us, because we haven't had that in the past. So what we do as a Board of Finance now is we do 3-year look backs, and it's on our spreadsheet. We can see what we did in the prior years and do comparison with explanation notes next to it when there's a major increase or decrease. It just helps us know where we're going, or where we were and where we're going. But if we could get that as a board, it'll go a long way for us to instill some more integrity into your process. Because I can't hammer you guys, you're new, but it's rough. And the townspeople are, this is just the cap, this past episode with the financial devastation, yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, it's just a capstone on a long running mistrust with the finance of the schools, so.
Yeah, I very much appreciate you sharing that. And one, you know, I've reached out to set regular meetings with the first select, just to begin to have that relationship. I'd be happy to come and sit and meet with board's finance. We're certainly going to do our best to get a very transparent budget. Clearly, we're very much behind the 8 ball in this budget process this year, and we're kind of trying to get ahead of it. Trying to get our arms around what happened, and there's just a lot of questions. We should be very much farther ahead of all this in the next budget cycle.
Starting over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of the day, we have a new framework that Julie's put together. We're not gonna have years of previous expenditures that we can look back to.
Sure.
But we can at least begin to work off a solid base and be very willing and open to share why we came up with a number and explain, and they're all public documents, so my expectation is in a few years from now, we're gonna be in a much better place where you're gonna begin to say, hey, these numbers actually are what they say they are. And why? Because we can see where they come from. Clearly, budgets need to have that process.
Yeah, I think we're owed it.
Yeah.
I mean, 60% of our tax dollars go to the school. We should be able to answer the questions, so.
I agree with you 100%.
I wanted to also bring up questions regarding invoicing, right? So I know that part of the borrowing for loan is to pay back, or is to address not only the overages and expenses, but also invoicing. And I think Region 6 has $200,000 or so worth of invoices unpaid. And then there's another 500,000, 20. My understanding is that the 2.3 includes those unpaid invoices. It's my also understanding that Region 6 doesn't exist anymore. So I'm not sure how we can pay the bills. And then I know, Tom, you probably have a stack of them that you want to go over. I'm not sure that they're all.
Questions on this.
Yeah. So
So,
that's the next topic. I just wanted to open it up.
yeah, if you don't mind, I do have a statement I'd like to read first and then get some questions. I'm not gonna Bob Valentine us. It'll be less than 15 minutes. The font is very big, so I can read it, so. All right, so when it was known that there was an issue with the Region 20 budget last June or July, the issue should have been handled immediately with a comprehensive plan put in place that included a hiring freeze and spending reductions. Instead, money continued to be spent and people continued to be hired without sufficient funds in the budget to pay these expenses. In fact, the Board of Education hired a consultant from Ed Advance who pretty much said that they need to stop hiring and stop spending. They did not listen to their paid consultant. I think we paid about $5,000 for that service. The selectmen from the 4 towns offered their assistance in this matter, and eventually were able to meet with the interim superintendent and acting CFO, along with officers from the Board of Education. Each meeting seemed to generate more questions than answers. Just when we felt we were in agreement on an issue, that agreement would soon fall apart as soon as we walked out the door or at the next Board of Ed meeting. More recently, the first selectman and the Board of Finance chairs from each of the 4 towns, Warren, Morris, Goshen, and Litchfield, met with the members of the administration and Board of Education members. When we left that meeting, we felt we were all in agreement on the school budget, and how to best deal with the capital budget and the debt. No one was 100% pleased with the plan, but we realized it was the best way for us to move forward. Much to my surprise and that of many others, at the April 10th Board of Education meeting, the budget was presented with 3 different options. I've never seen that, what we do, but there's 3 options. One of the options was the one we had previously agreed to. The other 2 options added more costs to the proposed budget. In what seemed like a predetermined vote, the costliest option was chosen out of the 3 and approved by some of the Board of Education members. That is our budget now. So this brings us to where we are tonight, with the town of Morris facing an 18% increase in its Region 20 appropriation over the current year budget. It is my feeling that back in July, if we had stronger leadership in place, not only at the administrative level, but also on the Board of Education, we could help solve this financial mess much more quickly, which would have lessened the impact on our students and our taxpayers. Instead, things just dragged on over the summer, the fall, the winter, and here we are spring, almost into summer. More people were hired, some were let go, more money was spent, and the deficit ballooned to at least 1.9 million. Pensions were left unfunded and bills were left unpaid. More and more invoices from Region 6, Litchfield Schools, and Region 20 kept being sent to the towns. Hopefully, we've seen the last of those invoices. We don't seem to know which ones have been paid, which ones haven't, and who's responsible for paying them. So that brings me to the invoices. I received the invoice from Region 20, dated April 11th, for Morris, for a total of $69,053.12. I would like to ask who directed this invoice to be sent to the town of Morris?
That is encumbering, that's all of the invoices that Region 20 paid on Region 6's behalf throughout this fiscal year, split between 3 towns per last year's weight.
Okay, and how was it determined that the town of Morris is liable for these invoices?
That's something that we've been in communications with. When we met with all of the selectmen and all of the Board of Finance, we discussed these invoices.
Right,
And so we talked about sending them out and reviewing them all.
so for review, but is there any case law or something in Connecticut state statute that makes the town of Morris or Warren or Goshen responsible for the liabilities of a regional school district that's no longer exists? Did you guys seek any legal opinions on this?
We did.
Could you share those with us? Because we haven't seen them.
Yeah, ultimately, our understanding after a conversation last Friday with our attorney is Region 6 doesn't exist. Region 20, there's options on the table. Either Region 20 pays these bills and is in deficit for it. All the towns of Region 6 are part of Region 20. So in many ways, it's just a different mechanism to make the payment.
But again, Region 6 never called a district meeting.
Yeah.
They never got approval for this excess spending from the towns. Right. Our hands are tied. There's no longer a Region 6. I don't know, how are you going to figure this out, whether it's going to be through the Attorney General's office, through the legislature. Our hands are tied as far as paying these bills. We don't have the authorization to do it.
So the invoice are for, correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, the invoices are for, that you receive are for bills that have been paid by Region 20 that were incurred from Region 6. So,
That's correct.
There's probably outstanding bills that have not been paid.
correct.
That's all part of this, I would assume. These are all invoices that you sent.
So there's definitely a collection of invoices that were paid and there's a collection of invoices that have not been paid. And one of the conversations we're having, again, trying to get ahead of this 8 ball is one of the problems that I'm seeing is numbers keep changing.
Yep.
Part of the reason
That's
numbers
beginning.
keep changing is the work's not been finalized. The digging hasn't stopped. You gotta get to the bottom of it so that you can then have your full accounting of what occurred and what was paid, what hasn't been paid, who owes what. And that process isn't completed. I know that there's a meeting scheduled, I think it's May 12th, to go through invoices with all the communities to come to some agreement on who owes what. But you raise an issue that is a legitimate legal concern. How do you pay it? Right, and there is no direct answer. Our attorney was unable to say, this is how you do it. Doesn't mean it can't be done. Ultimately, it might be that Region 20 in deficit has to come up with a way to become whole.
Well, I was told at the budget hearing, when I asked specifically about the 3.5, well, we thought it was 3.5 at the time, it was actually 3.53 loan that we're going for, that the 1.9 was for the deficit we're in. The 400,000 on top of that was to help pay these.
For the payments that have been made, the district is in deficit, so it can help the district come out of deficit. Correct.
So we get a bill for this, yet it's in the loan.
Because, sorry,
Go ahead.
if we received payment for the bills that we paid on Region 6's account, our deficit would be reduced and therefore the amount that we borrow would be reduced.
it seems like, you're kind of covering the 2.3 million. You weren't really saying what it was really for, and I think a lot of people had a problem with that. They were seeing a $1.9 million deficit, then we just told tonight it's a $2.3 million deficit. It's not really a deficit, is it? If you're gonna get paid back? Or are you just judging you're not gonna get paid?
So I know that, again, listening to past public meetings, Tom, the gentleman who's been hired as a consultant, did speak to the fact that included in the proposed bonding was extra revenue, this money, because there was no guarantee there'd be a way to pay this back. And so he spoke to that.
Yeah.
And that has been part of the discussion moving forward. And that was part of the discussion with Attorney Ritter on Friday. This is a potential mechanism to help alleviate some significant problems. I don't think anyone has questioned that, and maybe I'm wrong, but these services were rendered to the students who attend the schools in the 4 towns that make up Region 20. It's more of this legal quagmire we're in, as to how do you release the fund?
There was definitely much more than just, tuition or special costs for students. I mean, I hate to make light of it. There was $250 backpacks that were given to the Litchfield Board of Education members. There's almost $20,000 in fleece jackets with the Bobcat logo on it.
That's
We're
not
handing
Region
out.
6 expense.
Well, no, but I mean, these are the invoices that I'm looking at here. And some of them were sent to us as, this is, supposed to be split between Litchfield and Region 6. I don't think so. In fact, when this whole thing was coming together, we were told about what's, for Region 20, we were told all the debt from Region 6 and the Litchfield school system would be absorbed by Region 20. So to me, this is a pile of debt. The pensions are a pile of debt. The unemployment claims are a pile of debt, all from Region 6 and Litchfield schools. That's the way I look at it. That's what we were promised. Promises were made all over the place. Whether that holds up or not, I don't know. And speaking about the pension, the last payment to the Region 6 pension was May of 2022. So it's 2 years that the pension, Region 6 budget had a line item in it for the pension. They didn't use that money to pay the pension. Since Kristen, you were the only one there out of the 3 of you. Do you know why they didn't pay the pension?
No idea.
And any idea where the money went?
No idea.
Because we, as taxpayers, we approve budgets, and I know you can move money within, especially within school district budgets more freely than we can in the town budget. But we try to trust, the people working for us to do the right thing, and it did not happen. That pension, it's funded below 30%. It's getting lower in every month, and there's nothing going into it. In fact, there's money in the current Region 20 budget for this pension. I've been told it's not going to be applied to the pension. We voted on that budget. It was a line item budget. Why is that not happening? Because anyone can put money into the pension account. Why aren't we? Why isn't Region 20?
Into the Region 6 pension?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the budget. There's a line item for the Litchfield pension as well.
Again, I don't have direct knowledge, but they're looking at a $2.5 million deficit, so there is no money. I mean, that's the ultimate. And, at the end of the day, we have to come up with an operating budget that provides the district with sufficient funds to deal with these historic overages. And
So does next year's budget fund pension?
Not
Not
really.
Region
No,
Right, so that has to be absorbed by the 3 towns.
which
That's to be determined.
to be determined.
This is the debt left over from Region 6.
Right.
I feel horrible for those pensioners of Region 6 who's seeing what's left in that account dwindle from, it was 800,000 probably a couple of months ago. It's just going down every month. It's just not right. I think Region 20 has to step up, do what was promised, and absorb the debt from the 2 other school districts and make it work. But I don't see it in this budget.
Yeah, I can tell you, again, as a third party stepping in here, that the proposed budget cannot do that. It's not funded to that level. And funding for schools will have to come up quite a bit if you expect Region 20 to make Region 6 whole. It's just mathematically impossible. That number that we talked about at 3.9 is squeezing every bit of juice out of the school district. I'm very concerned that a $325,000 contingency is really all the fat that exists in that budget. So one miscalculation and we're back at like discussing deficit. That's how tight the number is now. And now you're talking about, let's add payments for historic problems. There's just not enough funding for the schools. They won't be able to exist that
It
way.
was all part of the promise that was sold to the taxpayers of Warren, Morris, Goshen, and Litchfield.
I just,
And it's been failing us.
I can just add to this, and I think Bob Valentine touched on it. I'm pretty familiar with the state statutes and what we can do and what we can't do. And I asked Dave Capoletti this when we started with Litchfield, saying, oh, well, Region 6 will pay us back. And everybody's assumed this, and it's very frustrating sitting on the Board of Finance and not having the opportunity till now to say, do we know the answer to this? Because our state statutes do not allow us to do it. Morris is not Region 6. Region 6 is not Morris. That entity was dissolved by the state of Connecticut. We don't have the authority as a Board of Finance, if our state statutes say we as a town can authorize up to $20,000 without going to these fine people and saying, we need more money. We cannot, by state law, authorize any of this to go to Region 20. The law does not allow us to do that. It's not a want or wish, but I've heard the last 6 months, Litchfield saying, well, Region 6 will pay us back, and Region 20 is now saying Region 6 will pay us back. And there is this big, huge elephant in the room. I think Bob Valentine talked about threading the needle. Region 6 is gone. The state, and I think just putting it together and not actually following it through, but the lawyers are kind of saying the same thing. Dave Capoletti, the auditor, said the same thing. It's not cut and dry because that can't be paid without us getting in serious trouble. If I compel Rick to write a check for $400,000, he's gonna tell me I'm not going to jail for you because that's state law. Cannot do it. We need to figure that out, and I think being on the Board of Finance, and the frustration of being here and just being told Region 6 owes, that's sort of the biggest thing we need to figure out. I think when Region 6 dissolved, the state approved it. The state is saying Region 6 doesn't exist anymore. They won't give us a Board of Ed back. They won't anything. What I think the state's saying is they're done. And going on what you talked about is part of that agreement, and I don't know what documents were given to the state, but it sounds like we agreed, Region 6 and Litchfield, no more, and it's all gonna be Region 20. And no, it's not happy news for Region 20. That might be what we have to do, but I don't see whatever the outcome to that is. I don't see it quick. I don't see it June, July 1st. Oh, here's a check for this and here, Litchfield, you can have that. We just have no way of doing that. And I think Bob Valentine said that too. There's no way of doing that legally for us, for our Board of Finance, our treasurer and our select board.
That is an open.
It is an open legal question, and the one avenue that has been discussed is Region 20. And all the 4 towns are part of Region 20.
Right.
And
And
that's part of the loan that
correct.
Right.
So again, that may be the mechanism. I mean, that's certainly one on the table, right? Is that funding the school district to the level necessary to allow it to continue to provide the services that folks want at a cost level that folks also can live with. Like, there's a very, very tight balance there.
But we don't have all that money in that loan. We have what, 300,000, 400,000, I mean, what was put, it's 400,000 was put towards the Region 6 Litchfield bills that were paid by Region 20 in the loan. But that's not still what's outstanding or everything that's been paid, or we don't know. We don't have a balance. on it.
So correct, and that's why the May twelfth meeting is very important to get to the bottom of what the totals are. And then I know I've talked with the chair of Region 20. I think Region 20 will then, once we know what those files of bills are and those amounts are, we can present Region 20 with options that it can look at. And also, we're meeting on the 12th with TAPS to talk about this. Ultimately, it's in everyone's best interest to figure out a way to thread this needle, resolve this and move forward. I am painfully aware that nobody, and I'm moving into the region, nobody is interested in massive tax hikes and, just looking at revenue. This is a very delicate balancing act that we have.
But is May 12th a little too late? We have these votes are coming up on the 6th. We may be inadequate in our loan if it's going to legally be Region 20's deal. Anything
Well-
left over may have to legally go there. We're going on 6th and then we're meeting on the 12th, and what do we do if we end up there? Like, do we
Well,
pay that?
we certainly, I want to be sure that I'm in no way advocating for an outcome on May 6th, so that'll be what it'll be. And then we'll have to make plans based on whatever that is. We are modeling with what we believe we know those invoices to be, but my coaching has been, until we know, stop releasing numbers.
Absolutely.
Right,
I
'Cause
agree.
there's
I totally agree.
there's a desire to be responsive because we'd like trust.
Right.
But if you're overly responsive before you can get to the bottom, all you're doing is actually eroding the trust,
Yep.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Coming up with different numbers,
Yep.
right? So we're gonna get to the bottom. And we need to do that before May 12th. And we also need to speak to the Region 20 about its options, while we speak to towns about options, and try to pull this together so that we can encapsulate this problem and move on.
Well, we'll have all of the invoices
Yes.
and we will know which ones have been paid, who they were paid by. We'll know which ones have not been paid. We'll have to make a judgment on where we feel those unpaid invoices should be paid.
Yes.
Cause like I said, I looked through some that were supposed to be for Region 6. But no, that wasn't Region 6. No, that wasn't Region 6. We're not paying for water bottles with Bobcats on them. That's not Region 6. We're the Mogo Warriors, we're the Bobcats. Little things like that add up quite quickly in this stack of bills.
All right,
But we
and
don't have,
can I just, we could go on and on here?
no, I have one last question
Okay.
for you.
Yeah.
For you now, and maybe for Tom. What does that, and maybe this is afterwards? When we talk about our budget, well, how
Yeah.
do we plan for this? Or maybe,
That-
well,
that
you know what, we can table that to
Yeah.
afterwards.
Well, part of our challenge is really finalizing numbers, because we can't present the town with a true budget, propose it, but it's kind of iffy based on some of these outstanding questions. So we want to get the real numbers as quickly as possible so that we can build our town budget accordingly.
Are you doing open forum? I was late, so I apologize.
I'm sorry?
I just had one more question before they leave. I don't know if you're
Well,
close.
so I know there's public here, and in the interest of time, it's been an hour. I didn't know if the public had specific questions for.
I just have one more. I have
Yeah.
one more for the board,
Okay.
if you don't mind. So with the state rules showing that we cannot, if your budget comes in at 43 million. So next fiscal year, we're obligated to be at that level. That's the bedrock, right? And you can't decrease more than 5% per year. Is there a state statute or is there an exemption to that statute that we can apply for? So that in the future, our towns aren't stuck at that level? So has that been somebody like,
Only in year one do they not hold you to the minimum budget requirement.
anyone past this current fiscal?
This year is year one.
Okay, so next year would be your,
Would be, they will set a minimum budget requirement state.
that 43 plus. And that cannot go down ever.
There's exceptions to that.
Right.
That's
you
what I'm
have to
asking.
Have like significant
Decrease.
decrease in enrollment, there are some triggers.
Okay.
Thank you for sticking around. If we
Yeah,
get
just
yeah.
simple. You've got a stack of invoices have not been paid. Most invoices I see, if I don't pay my oil bill, they start tacking interest on that. So is that a constant moving target now? We've got $400,000 worth of unpaid invoices where the vendors are adding interest to that while we decide how to pay it.
A couple of them are charging late fees, but the majority of them are flat.
Thank you.
Oh, the unemployment, they charge interest plus penalties.
Right.
So that's still sitting out there, the unemployment compensation.
Any other questions from the public?
Yes.
Yes,
Lori Linden here.
sorry?
I'm Lori Linden here.
Yep.
I have a couple of questions, so please bear with me. And thank you all for being here tonight. It's helpful to see people face to face and not just be over the phone. We're in a very difficult predicament, as we all know, so I appreciate your time. I'd like to, a couple of answers, if you could please, to know what the status of Mr. Leone's unemployment collection is still. Is he still collecting unemployment, and if so, what is the end final number for that? Does anybody know? Okay, I'd also like to know, there was also a part about he needed to pay back the money he owed in his contract, to look for another superintendent. Was that money ever recuperated? And if so, how much? If not, how much?
I'm not aware of that.
No one knows. Dr. Villar, can anyone here from Region 20 be able to tell me where the pension funds went that were paid?
As we said earlier, no one here knows.
Does anybody know?
I have not yet been given an answer to the question, so at this point, I don't know who knows.
So they would be answering to you?
Well, certainly, yeah, I start Thursday, but I'm responsible for the budget for this fiscal year to the end and then until next year. I think the digging into this Region 6 piece is a more difficult project. I know that there's discussions about different, but I have not been directed to investigate a previous school district's finances.
Yeah, I think, it comes to light that is really, it doesn't seem like any one person has an answer to all the issues that come before us over the past several months. I think as a taxpayer and for the group of people that we try to problem solve, we want to be part of the solution, but we're asking for money before we have answers. Can't ask for money. We have to teach our children that if you go over budget, you don't get to go to the bank and take out $5, $6, $7 million. You have to make changes next month in that budget. Smaller scale, but nonetheless a lesson, right? I want to know, and I do want answers to all of these, please. I want to know at what point did the trustees relinquish their duties to oversee that pension money? Or did something else happen? And I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I would like to know what happened. I would like to know, Ms. Stovall, who the acting CFO was that you referred to earlier this evening.
Tom Ariola?
Thanks. Got an answer. And lastly, I'm going to quote you, Dr. Villar. The work has not been done. It's not completed. You are absolutely right. I absolutely agree with you. And thus, this budget is not completed. We need to dig harder, deeper. You cannot burden the taxpayers of all of these communities who are already struggling to put food on their table or to buy their medicine. And I'm a community nurse. I see these people. So there has to be a compromise. It can't just be about the school. It has to be about everyone. And I can tell you, I strongly support higher good education, but not off the backs of the taxpayers who don't even know what just happened. Thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I got it. I'm behind you, so.
Yep.
So I want to piggyback on what our selectman made a comment before about having meetings and being told or promises made. By, I assume it was the Region 20 Board of Ed. So my question is there anybody who's still on the Region 20 Board of Ed that was there from the beginning?
Yeah.
In other
Yeah.
words,
Yes.
who's there now that was there when all the budgets were being made and the overspending, et cetera, et cetera? Who's still there?
Yeah.
Anybody?
I know the answer, but I don't think that's where we need to go, because I don't think that's not, I don't believe that's
That
the,
might be just.
I don't believe that's what the real issue in this whole.
Well, that's a question he asked.
Question.
Well, the question is that if those people were in charge of the budget and promises were made and selectmen that were told X, Y, Z, and you're talking about transparency and you're talking about building trust, and you have people who are sitting on the board who were part of this debacle, those people need to leave in order to build the trust, at least from me. Because I don't trust the board giving them a nickel from what happened. I just don't trust you, so, and if you're telling our selectmen, it seems to be the story that, we're told this, we're told this, we're told that, and things change, and those same people are still there, then how can we build trust if the same people are running the train?
The only thing I can say as a superintendent, I've been a superintendent in a lot of different places. Your board relies on you as the chief executive officer of the district to produce the information, and you as the chief executive officer depend on your staff to give you the information. And clearly, in that chain, the information that moved up was inaccurate. That's what we've seen as we've dug into this budget. Yeah, I think it's a difficult position for any elected person to be put into when given documents, heard presentations, and told this is the information, and then later on you find out it's not.
So you had the old political thing where, president had a sign on the desk that says where the buck stops here, right? So who was feeding that information then? If we're gonna, say that the board, and I probably agree with you, that maybe not responsible fully. So who is that? I mean, I know there were some questions here about, so where does the buck stop? Who was the puppet master behind all this? And I know it's not you because you're just coming in. Right? So, and I think until those answers, those questions are answered, coming to towns asking for a large increase and stuff and thinking, well, okay, is this going to solve our problem? We're gonna bite the bullet 1 year, but now we know that budget's never gonna go down. So if we raise the budget this year, next year, it's not gonna go down, it's gonna go up again, it's gonna go up again, it's gonna go up again. So it's Billy Joel said, it's a matter of trust. And it's an uphill battle right now.
Dave, and then I want to get a couple people online. You guys have been here appreciate your time. Maybe another 10 minutes or so, and then let you guys go.
The current budget. Julia, you built it, right?
A lot of it, yes.
Who else helped you?
Tom Ariola had it started when I came on.
And
And I worked with all of the administrators of all of the schools, all of the buildings and all of the department heads. So there's a lot of hands.
But you're the one who actually finalized it and put it together, presented it to the board.
Yes.
And prior to you, there were other. There was an acting CFO, and prior to him, there were a series of CFOs such as that. Aren't they really the ones responsible for the budget? The board has to approve it and make sure it's up and right, but if you don't have a competent CFO creating the budget, isn't that going to cause problems?
Absolutely.
And anyway, but that's just my opinion on the matter. That's where the problems arise from, because I mean, you can go back to us, not gonna name any names, but you go back to a superintendent we had like 8 to 10, 15 years ago. I think that person may have been a competent CFO, may have been, I don't know, but he's put on a good act, but he became superintendent. And he always seemed to hire people who weren't necessarily skilled at their positions. And I always felt he did that because he had controlled that. And there's been a long history of that in Region 6, at least. I can't speak towards Litchfield. And, that is that plus years and years of 0% increases, I think is finally reared its head. That's my opinion on the matter. Thank you, Joe.
Courtney, I see your hand up and then we'll go to Mike.
Yes, hi, Courtney Designer, Goshen. I appreciate you folks all being there, and I was unable to make the Goshen Board of Finance meeting, so happy to have another opportunity to revisit some of the same questions. You guys can hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah, if we
Okay.
could just ask a question, not a.
Absolutely.
And
So
it-
when you Google Tom Ariola, CFO or CFA or CPA's resume, he comes up as having served time and been arrested for felony
Hey, Courtney,
bribery
Courtney,
charges.
I really don't want to go in there. This is really for a town of Morris residents. So thank you. Mike?
Hi, folks. Thanks for all this information. It's been very informative. I'll make this brief since most of my points were already made by others in the public. I wanted to say that the new cost and accountability controls that were discussed, they're encouraging, but it's still not sufficient to be able to vote yes on the referendum, because the people that are responsible for this boondoggle are still present, and until they've been identified and purged, you just can't assure us that the budget problem is solved.
Amen.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you guys for your time. Been very generous, especially for coming in out of town. Appreciate your time.
Punch in at 12:01 on Thursday morning.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Seeing me on this side of your board.
Got a lot of work to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know. I got two hats.
We know how many people have this job.
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, he said it would be easier. I mean, he said in February, it's going up a lot of signs, and we also got a grant for
Contracts that brought it up to 4.2.
That's what I'm saying. They got $100 million.
Oh, so what happened, I mean, you made a comment in category 1, FAGs are going down. You received a grant for $450,000. The raises are 4.2. But yet the expense is going up 3.7. So how can you lose people, get $500,000 and still be overspent?
So includes where we had the school that wasn't funded, the long.
That's what I'm saying. That's the kind of stuff, though, if you had FAGs to be able to see it. I'm only talking about category 1.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Again, the comments don't match. It's a $500,000, you're getting a grant for $500,000. How can you be going, how can you spend more money? Lose people.
That will continue year after year, that list where everyone is. Out from you or something, you can also see, numbers of bodies.
Exactly, no, I think that's, then you can see the up and up.
Yes.
Substitutes, is that people just like calling out sick? Like, is that a full-time? You guys average 19 people a day calling out sick as a region?
I'd say post pandemic, that's.
You could find 19 substitutes in Brown here. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I live in Brown. And what they have to do, they could barely get one person to come. So what they have to do is hand out stickies to people to come. $173,000 is, I mean, a 180 day, you're saying 19 people on average. That's a pandemic.
Can we finish our meeting?
All right, no problem. Have a good day.
Just it's the quickness of probably all these people want to know what we.
Just want to be here for the.
We did, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, wait, so don't even.
No,
What time is
we're not adjourning, we're just. Finishing, which was
Who's taking notes?
Mark,
Mark.
he's our secretary.
He doesn't.
I keep the man, Mark's the man.
You were writing stuff down.
He's an apprentice. The next item is the review of the town budget for this year. I don't know if anybody has the energy to do that, but I don't know that we can go forward until we have more concrete numbers.
I don't think anything really changed for us.
No, we might have some good news.
Yeah.
The state might be giving us.
More?
But might be giving us $60,000 more in ACS, but.
That's.
It's got a ways to pass, because right now it's at 254, but it might go up to 311. So that's a,
Nice.
When would you know?
We'll take it.
all of us will know the same when the state says the budget's done.
So right now, just to review, I think we ended up tentatively with everything we know at 19.13. So if everybody's online, they probably don't know yet. So we may get to claw a little bit back if the state gives us a little more, but we don't know yet. And then we're not sure. We're not gonna finalize until after the vote to see where the school ends up. If it passes, then we move forward. If it doesn't, then we sit back
I'm not
and
sure what we do now.
probably end up going overtime, but
Yeah,
we've been there before.
yeah. I think when you look at the whole thing, we gotta get the school finalized. And then once we get that.
Well, and then there's the invoices and the pensions and.
Well, that's
all those
it.
things.
Well, we do have
built
money,
that in.
we have money for the pension in our budget.
Right.
If they assume the responsibility of it, that's good news for
us.
bad news for the school system,
But we don't know. We don't know unpaid bills, like, I mean, depending on what happens, and again, I don't know the answer. I know the statutes, I don't know the answer, but if somebody comes back and says, well, you know, your portion of this is $500,000. I don't even know where to go with that.
I thought, were we not tentatively at 178,000?
Someone needs to turn off the Zoom meeting.
Why?
Why?
We're still meeting. You're welcome to leave.
What was I gonna say? Well, you know, I got this invoice from Region 20 for the $69,000. And first of all, like I said during the meeting, we're not obligated to pay this. It's really not our bill, it's Region 6. If it end up coming down to have to pay something like this, I would take it off our in-kind services for what we do for Region 20 throughout the year. We do all the plowing over there for them. We plow the playground off for them. We do additional work for them.
Sand and salt.
Sand and salt. We could start chipping away at this bill that way too.
It might be the legal way to do it, and it might be the.
I mean, right now,
Development
we
solution.
don't charge Region 20, we
Right,
don't charge
right.
Region 6. But I see, you know, in Litchfield, they don't do the same work we do here with their public works. So we're actually paying more into Region 20 in that way with this in-kind service
Yeah.
than other towns. So I think we have a long ways to go. I think we gotta get past Tuesday.
Yeah.
See where we're at. and go from there. I think are we still at -3 right now for?
Town, yeah.
Town is -3.
Yeah,
Which is
and I don't,
pretty good, I would must say.
yeah, I don't think you, well, you guys would know, but you don't see that changing
I don't think,
with our town
I
budget.
think we're good with many of the numbers we have.
We're solid
I
there.
don't see any.
It might be a little bit,
No,
3.1.
Oh, no, if we get to $61,000, it'll go lower. It'll probably go to 3.3 or whatever, or 3. Whatever it's been working out.
that'd be the revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might even get us to like 18.99.
Okay.
Oh.
Um,
Oh. Can we get below that 19? I would think
all right, so
9.99.
I guess the question is, do we need to meet next week after the
Or do we wait till the 12th?
following week? You say you're gonna be away or something?
No, I'll be around. One thing you gotta consider is getting your hearing date posted. Right? You do your hearing date and then you have 2 weeks after that for your budget meeting.
Right.
So it really gives a crunch time, especially if you're a tax collector, the longer we push that out.
Yeah.
She's not gonna be happy with us this year, but I don't know if we should wait till after the 12th to finalize because
Well, then we will know.
I would do
more.
it as soon as you can.
So I just ran it by Mark real quick, but is there a possibility that the 4 towns could come into an agreement to share the cost of a forensic audit under the $20,000 cap needed for the public's approval?
I think
So that
we
we,
have 2 different school systems, so in Litchfield was it doing.
oh, it would be the 3
on-
towns,
Yeah,
right?
so it'd be the
Yeah,
3
right.
towns. And the more invoices that come out, how that's been handled in Region 6, really gives me cause to think, lean in the direction of a forensic audit, my personal opinion. I know it's a lot of money.
Are we talking-
based on what Litchfield would pay, which is about the same size school system we had, you're talking $85,000.
It's $85,000, but I think that's gonna answer a lot of questions in the public's mind. I know we can't do pay it off like a capital project over years, but it might be worth entertaining because if we could share that burden with the other 2 towns and they would agree to it, then it might be worthwhile to ask the town vote for
for a fund balance,
to fund it, to fund the forensic
we
audit.
have to do some interlocal agreement.
Yeah,
right?
to do that.
To do that, I
Figure
think
it out,
we'd have
people.
to. meet
But I
with
think
the
it's
selectmen and go
It's an
from
option that we should lay out in front of the towns and let them tell us what they think.
Okay, so are we meeting right after? I guess the question is, do we want to meet on Wednesday after the
there.
vote?
No, around on Wednesday.
Okay,
I don't think so.
wait till the following Tuesday,
Following Tuesday, dust will settle. We'll have our solid numbers.
because we also don't know if it's gonna pass.
Right. But I think, yeah, if the meeting's on the 6th and then they're gonna meet again on
So-
the 12th, then
Devil's advocate, they both don't pass. Imagine that we don't, the referendum doesn't pass and the bonding doesn't pass. And the school budget would revert in what? July 1st would revert to last year's $41 million school budget.
Right.
So in that case, the number for us would
Go down.
not hit 18, we wouldn't see the 18% increase, but we still need to put in reserve because we know we're gonna get hit with it. and
Right, they're gonna
plan
keep-
for it.
right.
Absolutely.
they're gonna have to keep.
So
going.
just mental chess would be 3 steps ahead.
Or do we
At least-
not? Or do we not do a budget? And go past the July 1st deadline and just do that route?
It
It's
depends.
a big nut,
It
and
depends
that's the
on how many-
problem.
That's the problem.
We could get ourselves into trouble.
Well, it depends on how
second
many
guessing.
referendum. If they have more referendums and actually make cuts that the public likes, or they find other avenues or ways to create a different budget that people can digest and palate.
All right, so let's,
Would you meet on the 13th?
yeah, 13.
Set a hearing, if say everything passes,
Right,
set a hearing date, would you want to do the 20th?
Yeah,
yeah, we'd have to go 2 weeks.
2 weeks from that would be June 3rd,
Yeah.
would be a town meeting, I think.
Yep,
Yeah, I'd recommend that.
yeah.
yeah, and then I don't know if we're gonna go to referendum or not, or probably see what the feeling is from the selectmen and from the townspeople.
So the 13th,
We'll meet.
and then hearing
20th.
20th. Town vote. On the 27th?
June 3rd.
Oh, June 3rd, right? 2 weeks out.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good. Hopefully the answer's done.
We're gonna approve some minutes. Had them printed.
I thought you had one right there in front of you. You just touched.
This was last week's. And just.
I don't need.
Okay.
We want to approve the April 22nd. Meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the April 22nd minutes as written.
You're seconding?
I will.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And then the 15th, kind of had a little technical issue. Don't have those printed, but I do have them online. Everyone wants to take a quick gander.
Mr. Reich overwrote the 15th with the 22nd. And I just sent him a copy that I redid before we came.
Okay, you want me to read it out loud?
Sure.
Okay, meeting was called to order at 19:04 because we have to use military time. Oh, my God. Present Kip Finch, Hunter White, Mark Johnson, Rob Shep, thank you. Tracy Martin, absent Scott Popbecker. Rick Nicoletti, treasurer, proposed closing out CNR items, list will be attached by Kip Finch. Motion by Tracy Martin to close out CNR, completed projects is submitted and move funds to unassigned capital balance. Mark Johnson seconded. Motion passed unanimous. Motion by TM to accept the annual suspense list as submitted by the tax collector in the amount of 33,000, there's a typo. 33,028.76.
That's military.
Military, number of signs.
That is not.
Okay, well, whatever that is, it's supposed to be.
I'll fix the typo.
We'll just approve them later.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, do you want to just fix this, send them and approve it out, or do you want to just as amended, we'll fix that number, and I don't know what it is.
They'll be amended and submitted.
Okay, amended and submitted for the proper number, which is probably a penny off. The motion passed. Budget discussion, first selectman presented a proposal to the Board of Finance. New business, non-public comment. Joel Skilton had a question about Region 6 superintendent's payouts. Motion to adjourn by Kip Finch at 20:06. Tracy seconded. All voted aye and the motion passed.
And I'll make a motion to approve these minutes with the amended version to. fix-
The amendment.
Yep.
The attached.
And the
And I have the
attachment,
attachment.
and we have to add the attachment. to it.
Yep.
All right, I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. I don't have any other new business.
We have public comment? Anybody more? Oh, no, we moved
We
public comment.
moved public comments.
Okay,
Public
motion to
comments.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 8:28.
Second.
All those in favor? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.